Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of QTube with Q Review. And today we are speaking all the way from Toronto. I believe you're in Toronto today. The one and only Regina Gently. Hello, Regina. How are you?
Hello, I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. You're a name that is keeps popping up for me all the time. I will admit, from the drag perspective and drag world, I'm not so familiar. It's a new world for me that I'm getting associated with and getting to know. It's a vibrant world. I know old school
Uh-huh.
drag.
Okay.
I may look a slight younger, but I'm a little older. But I'm from the old school world, and today's world of drag is so very different and so vibrant.
Mhm.
How long have you been in the drag arena for? I call it an arena because sometimes it's like war.
Yeah. I know. Well, it's hard for me to believe also, but this is actually the 10th year that I have been around. Regina the Gentle Lady was my first name that was given to me by some friends at this party called Hot Nuts that used to be at the Beaver. So that was sort of where I started. And yeah, the first, couple years, it was just very like I would maybe go to a party, do a performance, the odd little thing, and then a few years in, I took it seriously. So technically, it's been 10 years, but it's maybe more like seven since I've been doing it full on, and yeah, and I had different names. I had a band called Light Fires as Regina, so I was using that name for a while, and then Regina Gently just came together a couple years ago. So, I haven't had the greatest branding, but she's been around. Yeah.
I used to live in Toronto, and I mean, I'm familiar with Church Street and a lot of what goes on there. The drag shows that would be at Cruise and Tango, and so I that's my background of that world, and I haven't lived there for about 20 years. I
Okay.
um, but that world has completely changed. And with the onset of RuPaul's Drag Race, and there's so many new drag artists that are coming out. What's the I guess the scene like in Toronto? Because what all we get from TV is what we see
Right.
um, in these large kind of pieces. But what's it like in Toronto right now?
Well, that's the thing. There's kind of, there are different scenes. There are different drag scenes. So there is like the Church Street scene. And then there's like sort of what's called like the West End scene, which is where like the Beaver was, and there used to be a bar called the Hen House and the Steady and a bunch of queer bars. Most of them are closed now. But even the Gladstone Hotel, like there's sort of like, and that's a bit more of like the alternative underground drag. So that's kind of where I came from. And even though my look isn't necessarily out there or terribly like club kid-esque, it's like because I usually sing live, right? And I write my own music. So that sort of puts me into that world because Church Street is, they don't, I have performed on Church Street for sure at Woody's and stuff, but that's not really what they want there. They don't want like original music, right? They want, and not to say there's only one flavor on Church Street. It's very diverse within itself, but just for what I do, it doesn't work there as well. So, I mean, it's hard to talk about the scenes because of the pandemic and like, I don't, it's hard to say what's happening because there's, obviously not a lot happening. But yeah, sadly, the Beaver, which is where I first started drag, just announced they were closing last month. So yeah, there's, that hit home and that's unfortunate, but is, not surprising in this time. So.
Well, you've mentioned, your music, and you have new music out currently.
Mhm.
And as far as I understand, more music on the way.
Mhm.
So we should talk about that. Any Other Boyfriend is out right now.
Yeah.
It is a banger. Like, I mean, you have a great knack for putting zing and spice into your music. Um, with and I think sometimes people get confused, and I, have mentioned this to a few folks where drag as performance is one thing, but music is music, and you're creating music, and people shouldn't get too confused that it's drag's not a genre of music, drag's performance, but your
Mhm.
music is really could be heard anywhere,
Right.
on the dance floor, could be heard on the radio.
Mhm.
And what's your process for getting into writing? So with Any Other Boyfriend, where did that come from?
Yeah, that came from so my previous band that I mentioned, Light Fires, that was me and another friend, and we were working on a second record, and then we kind of decided, well, I decided I wanted a different production sound, and so I kind of took a bunch of the songs that I was working with him, brought them to these new producers, and they are like steeped in like house music and techno and synths, and everything is like analog. It's like, their place is just full of drum machines and stuff, and very old school. So the sound, I'm glad you mentioned that, like, the stuff sounds like it can fit anywhere, because we really went for, I didn't want to make throwaway songs. I wanted, like, stuff that could be heard in clubs. And that one specifically, we referenced like 90s Nelly Hooper, like the first Bjork record. We took a lot of sounds that were used on that for Any Other Boyfriend. So the bass lines and the drums, and gave it this really nice, like, early 90s dance sound. And yeah, then the lyric, I just thought, it's fun to me. It's very relatable, I think, and accessible. And that was the idea, was I wanted to, like, really, I was trying to, like, I haven't always done this with my lyrics, like, thought about the audience, but that song I definitely was thinking, like, oh yeah, I want something people like will relate to and connect with. And, like, the line, like, you could be like any other boyfriend, was just so, yeah, fun to me, and I'm sure many people have have thought the same thing. So yeah, that's a little bit about that song.
There's a bit of empowerment in that lyric. It's sometimes people don't maybe I think too much into things, but when you hear that lyric that you could be like any other boyfriend, there is like a self empowerment kind of
Mhm.
piece that's in there that I would hope people take away from it. It's
Mhm.
part of you have so the album is coming,
Yeah,
which is Don't Wait to Love Me.
yeah,
Uh, so that's coming, and that's coming very soon. It's coming the end of this week, correct? September 18th.
yeah, yeah.
Um, what can people expect to hear on that? Is it going to be a lot of different things, or?
Yeah, well, there's a couple singles out now, and they are definitely, the club oriented stuff. There is a mixture, of, yeah, very clubhouse music, and then more into the pop sort of vein. There's a song called Vacation, and sort of more Robin-esque, like the modern pop stuff. And then there's an a cappella track on the end that I threw in, that I have a one-woman show that I was doing years ago, and that was a little piece I loved from that. And I do this piece live a lot. So I just recorded that a couple months ago. That was the last thing. I was like, I'm gonna do that little thing, and throw it on at the end for as like a little treat. So yeah. So there's
It's
lots.
well, I mean, it sounds very exciting, and
Mhm.
what's great about it is, and again, to kind of go back to understanding genre versus performance, is that as an artist in your own right, there's an intersectionality that's happening because your drag performance kind of piece, those are characters, and that's a world that you're putting out in one respect, and then you have your music,
Mhm.
and the two can coexist, and they obviously do, and they do well. Do you find there's almost is there an expectation from a drag performer, for someone who's very well known for drag, to create a specific type of music? Do you find that there's an expectation or maybe a stereotype, I guess?
Yeah, I find that it's often humor based, or I mean, I don't, I don't know. I guess it's broadening now. Like Trixie Mattel has a country record, and it is broadening, but I don't often find that it is. It sometimes feels like an afterthought for a lot of queens, like especially the ones from who were on Drag Race. It's kind of like, oh, they have all this attention, like they need stuff to do, so they make a single or something, sometimes they're great. Some of those one tracks are great, and then sometimes it's very much like, oh, okay, this is a product. You just needed a product, so you got someone to write a song for you. So and for me, the difference is like music is like the first thing. So it's almost like I've been doing music since I was a teenager, playing in bands, and I used to be in a band called the Hidden Cameras, and so it's like that's always first, and then the drag was sort of second for me. So that's kind of like I feel like a difference. And that's and because that goes into my thought process and when I'm writing and stuff. Like I never want anything to just be like, oh, I need a single out now, so it connects to like you know something that I just did on social media, and that's not necessarily great for like the popularity contest, right? Because people love viral things. They love, things that blow up, and those things aren't always necessarily the best, things artistically. So, um, yeah, so I'm just doing my thing. I'm just like in my lane, going down the road. There's lots going on around me, but
You mentioned Trixie Mattel, and I referenced Trixie at different times because um, putting out a country album. Again, when we're talking intersectionality within entertainment, we have Trixie Mattel, who's a a drag queen, and a very a prominent, very noticeable one, but is also an artist.
excuse me, I just sneezed. Sorry.
Not a problem. Is also an artist, um, creating their own music and then dipping a toe, going into the country world. Because I've asked
Mhm.
country artists, have they seen a lot more, drag queens moving towards country, or do they ever see that? And they don't see a ton of it, but it's interesting because what I'm not seeing, and I would like to see, and maybe this is just me, is that more understanding and respect of the legitimacy of the music,
Mhm.
regardless of the performance piece. Radio seems to be, and I don't know if it's radio gatekeepers or just industry gatekeepers, but radio seems to not be really moving and picking up on the legitimacy of a lot of the drag performers.
Right.
I'm curious if you've serviced to radio. Have you had conversations with radio around your music?
Um, I have more in the past, when I was more sort of in the world of indie rock as a boy. Yeah, we used to deal with radio a lot. This time around a little bit. I'm getting like a little bit of like more college radio, a little bit of CBC actually, which is great. Like they played Any Other Boyfriend a couple weeks ago, which was nice. But queer radio, not that I've heard. No one's asked for an interview from you know those kind of stations, which is always interesting. Um, and it's frustrating, because it always comes down to money and advertising, and that's the unfortunate thing with radio. It's like not actually about the music, it's about advertising. So, yeah, so that makes it challenging for someone like me to get played on radio, or I'm sure Trixie Mattel even getting played on, like, I can't picture them getting played on country radio. I mean, who knows? Maybe they do, but I would be shocked. Yeah, but maybe in the States there's more opportunities for like there's probably queer country stations in the States. I don't know. I could see that.
What I was saying is that it's interesting that, music is music and good music is good music. And I think that's where we should be at. But you're right, it's advertising and it's marketing and it's dollars. You see an artist like Orville Peck come through, who's
Mhm.
getting a lot from the alternative kind of side of things, maybe not mainstream country. I don't know if they're ready for the man with the fringe mask, but that's kind of starting to take off there. And with drag, it's been, and I don't know if it's from an audience perspective, if they just don't understand that artists are doing different kinds of music and different styles of music. To listen to your music, if you only watch Drag Race, I guess this is a great way to put it. If you only watch Drag Race and then you listen to your music, I think people may be surprised, because they're taking what is happening there and what artists or the drag performers are doing there, and they may be just applying it to all drag performers, which is couldn't be any further from the truth.
Right.
Between yourself and Trixie, just for those two names. Do you think that, and this is a hard question to ask because you're right, with the pandemic and everything, we don't know what's going to happen, but do you think with Drag Race, especially now being in Canada and being so popular, that when we do get back to live performances, there's going to be more room for drag and more variety of drag to be kind of out there in more mainstream areas?
Um, yeah, it's hard to say. I think I think, it's more and more mainstream, so more people are getting onto it. And then, yes, in theory, that will lead to other types of drag becoming more mainstream. Um, you did see like maybe once on RuPaul's Drag Race, there was like a bearded challenge or something. But is like a bearded drag queen who is always has a beard. Like, are people going to get into that? I'm not sure. I would hope so. I would assume so. Um, I mean, I saw they announced a Netherlands drag race. So I can only imagine that will be hopefully more interesting. I haven't seen the ads for it or anything, so but yeah, I would think, yeah, let's get the European, drag, like let's up that a little bit. Not that I don't like the American, and the Canadian one was I loved that show actually. It was really refreshing. And a lot more satisfying than I thought it was going to be. But yeah, like, the UK one was interesting, and like, just keep that going to get these things into popular culture.
I think that there's, I mean, we always want more and we probably want it faster than it actually happens, because it all often feels like we're running a race with ourselves sometimes. But I think that you're right, like the European market and how many different things that they do over there could be really interesting.
Mhm.
From a musical, and it's what's really interesting about you, and I think it's because you have such a rich background in your music, because you're taking from so many different places and you've had so much experience. Where have you drawn inspiration from? And I guess, who are you inspired by at first with music, and who are you inspired by now? Who kind of is out there that really kind of gets you excited?
Yeah, well, in terms of making the record, we really went to, well, I mentioned the first Bjork record. We looked at like the Pointer Sisters, Prince, um, sort of 80s and 90s house music, like Big Fun and Technotronic. Eurythmics, like all kinds of, yeah, like Human League, like all manners of synth-based pop and house from the old school era. I'm really not inspired. I'm not inspired to make modern sounding dance music. It's just not what I want to make for myself. I do love Roy Sheen Murphy. Um, I love Robin, of course. I love, um, yeah, like all kinds of things, like Jessie Ware and Jesse Lanza and some of the Dua Lipa. Like, there's some great stuff out there, but just for me, yeah, we wanted to sort of do the throwback stuff and that's what we were constantly referencing, if we're like mixing one of my songs, then we were like playing, we're playing a Pointer Sisters song and then listening to mine again and then playing the Pointer Sisters and then listening to, and of course, I could never be the Pointer Sisters. There's just one of me. Um, but it's like aim high, right? And yeah, and if I can even get close to that, then I'm happy.
Favorite Pointer Sister songs? I'm a big fan of the Pointer Sisters.
Oh, there's one called Automatic. That's like, there's so many synths in that. It's not their biggest hit by any means, but it's such a classic song. Yeah.
When you sit down to write, are do you have it in mind? It's interesting because some artists will write melody first and some will have lyric or story that they want to tell. Are you either one, or do you just kind of like have an idea? What's your process like?
Melody is always first. Yeah, it depends. Lyrics are always last for sure. And then with this process, some of the tracks the producers had some beats and stuff that they would give me, and then that would inspire melodies. And then some things I would come up with on my own. I don't know if I do play guitar. I'm not sure if any of these songs I started on guitar, but that's happened also sometimes where I'll start something on guitar with a melody and then we shape something around it. So yeah, there's all manner, but I would say like 100% the lyrics are always the last sort of thing. And the yeah.
I mean, earlier and with like your band Hidden Cameras and it was more rock based. Um, and it was like rock pop kind of style. Do you draw much from that? Do you kind of ever go back and say, you know what, did you have a song at one point in time that you kind of wrote and you're in that music world and you have still in your back pocket and you kind of go, you know what, if I took that out and if I jammed it up, with what you're doing right now, have you ever thought about that? Like, do you ever go back and play with those older songs, I guess?
I don't. I've thought about doing that, but I haven't actually done it. And just to be clear, I wasn't the writer in the Hidden Cameras. I was just in that band. So I don't want the main writer to get mad at me. But yeah, I haven't done that. But what's funny is I have been during the pandemic. I have been exploring my singer-songwriter past as a boy. So I have been doing that. Just as a separate thing because I have had so much time over these past months. So, but yeah, I mean, maybe there's a lot of music there to mine. So,
Well, it's interesting, right? When you see sometimes, and I remember seeing a band recently who went back into their old catalog, and they were kind of like, "Oh my God, we forgot we wrote these things," and they took them out and applied kind of what they were doing now to those older songs, and all of a sudden, new life, and they found a new connection with it. But it's interesting, especially from your world, because it's just, yeah, I mean, so it's very different, and those synths that you're playing with now are so everything old is new again. That new wave
Mhm.
80s that I'm a big fan of. I was a Depeche Mode fan, and some of those artists back in the 80s that a lot of them are still around now, but they laid the groundwork for some of the really exciting music that's happening now. Um, do you and you kind of mentioned that you're not that interested in writing a modern dance song. Where do you think it's going to go next? No, having, and I ask you this because you do have a history, coming from different aspects, and I think you're a forefront thinking artist. Where do you see it going, or what's do you think is going to come next that could be really exciting?
Um, yeah, great question. I wish I had a crystal ball. Um, I know everything, everything comes around and it's true. I mean, you mentioned New Order. I mean, look at Kraftwerk. I mean, so many of their songs have been mined by people and all the way to Coldplay. Like, who would have thought Coldplay would be sampling Kraftwerk? But I think that will always continue to happen, like modern day people sort of mining from the past. But yeah, a new sound. I mean, yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, I feel so out of touch with reality because I don't know what reality is anymore, and I don't know if any of us do. But um, but I have to say, like the new stuff that like Roisin Murphy and this sort of this the last Robin tour, I don't know if you saw, like it was a very like she almost kind of remixed all her songs to be very clubby and and I feel like people are doing that more, so the club sound is coming out a bit more. um I don't know how mainstream that gets, but to me, Robin is like very mainstream, I guess. Just to Lady Gaga fans, it's like she's underground, or I'm not sure. But yeah, I'm not sure exactly. But that's the only trend I see happening is like this sort of more club. Like even Dua Lipa has like this club album, this remix album now that the Blessed Madonna did, and that just came out, and yeah.
It's interesting to watch those trends kind of unfold, especially in high profile mainstream, because typically more
Mhm.
artists are already at that point. They're doing it. They're just not necessarily being heard. And then
Mhm.
suddenly an artist will come along and it'll seem like they've tapped into a new vein of music. It's kind of like, oh no, that's been happening. Um,
Mhm.
I think back in the days of Malcolm McLaren, and some of the things that were kind of happening there. So the album is coming out, and uh, what's the rest of this year look like for you? I mean, with an album dropping, are you planning? And I hate asking artists this, and I say this every time I talk to one, but it's hard to plan because we don't know what's going to happen. But
Mhm.
how are you, I guess, planning for yourself? And what are you looking to finish the year out with?
Yeah, it's tricky. There was one music video that I shot in March, actually, like literally March 15th, we shot this music video. And that was the day, at least here, that everything shut down. So that's finished. So that's going to come out. And I'm filming some live performances this week, even. Um, yeah, one is for this festival La Vanya in St. John's, Newfoundland. I was supposed to go there to perform at this festival. It was supposed to be earlier in the year, and then they've moved it, and I can't go there, so they're having an online version. So I'm gonna film a bunch of live performances that I will then put online. So that's an idea, and hopefully be able to make some more music videos because I love that medium and I love that art form. And I've just started exploring Twitch, which is like a streaming platform that is becoming more known, and because I also DJ, so I'm thinking of starting to DJ on Twitch, and yeah, who knows? It's sort of like, it's like you said, we don't know. I mean, I know some people are performing live, like drive-in concerts, and if you're like at that level, and there's some patios that are doing performances, but of course, the colder it gets, I mean, patios are going to be closed by like probably next month unless they really extend them. So, yeah. So that's all I know. But who, like I said, who knows?
It is hard to ask, and I mean, as an artist, you want to be able to have that plan for yourself, and I know that most artists are struggling with that. What's nice to see is the the opportunity online is changing quite a bit. And we're now starting to get a little, well, I shouldn't say we all are, not to knock Facebook, but what the heck with your new pulling live streaming from artists. That's a new thing that they just kind of have said. But Twitch, of course, yeah, is a really great home for artists. And, some of the live stuff that's happening there and the live prides, um, it's great to see that. Calgary Pride has now started Pride Radio, and they're now starting to outsource a lot of artists that are around, which is great because I think that there needs to be more on the airwaves for queer artists, especially that are not getting opportunities. Um, with with prides being online, and doing those kind of recorded live sessions, is there, and I guess I think the answer is yes, but is there any hesitation about I guess the transition from that live performance into a pre-recorded, where typically that's not what you would do?
Mhm.
Is there new things that you're thinking of where it's kind of like, all right, how do I, put this down live, pre-recorded for a live show without compromising my brand or who I am as an artist? How much, and I, again, not to talk for you or whatnot, but I think I kind of know, but how much is it nerve wracking for you? That's probably a little bit of the question, I guess.
Right. It's very nerve-wracking because, well, I haven't done it yet, but you have to put time and money into these things, and then, it's not clear what the payback is in the same way that like if you're doing a concert, people pay to come see you and maybe they buy merch and there's sort of a bit more of like an obvious exchange in that way. Whereas now, I've done some live streaming shows, like in March and April and May and stuff, like even on Instagram Live, and then, asking for tips or that kind of thing, and people would e-transfer, and there's some things like that. But it's not, yeah, it is nerve-wracking because of that. It's we're filming some stuff this week, and it's you need a venue, you need sound people, you need videographers, you need like so many things, and then it's just for promo, really. I mean, I think of it as making art, of course, but it's yeah, it's a wild thing to be doing, especially at my level where, I don't have it's just me, right? So yeah.
It's a real unknown quantity of what to expect back,
Mhm.
and an unknown territory of will this kind of keep going forward, or can it, and what will become the next thing. So
Mhm.
I don't think that the general population sometimes takes into consideration the loss because for them it's and not to, you know, clamp down on anybody, but to be honest, I mean it's easy to say, sure, I'll watch that, and
Mhm.
then you have to say, well, if you know, remember to tip your performers and stuff.
Mhm.
There is no real incentive for people to do that. You just hope that they get what's going on. So that for me is why I'm hoping that this does not continue. I would love to see live continue,
Mhm.
but not at the sacrifice of in-person live. Do you know what I mean?
Right, right.
I love
Yeah,
the.
yeah, exactly. And it's hard to know, I think even this summer, I think I noticed a lot of less streaming happening because I think, March, April, May, like June, people were more into it. But then as summer came, people were like wanted to be outside and stuff. So you would assume going into winter, people will be back online more, but it's like, if you're working online now and you're checking your emails online and you're doing social media, then do you also want to like then watch someone's show online? Like, our eyes are gonna be like,
Yeah.
falling out. Um, so who knows?
Well, and I hope that you're right. I hope that with winter, it does. I mean, I don't think it fixes the fact that, you know, people also need to recognize that the expectation of you as a performer creating more and creating more dynamic because
Mhm.
people want to see that also requires you to spend more. So I
Right.
do hope that you know, that realization comes in. But
Mhm.
um, moving forward, I think that the album is going to be, I envision a success. If it's anything based off the singles that are out there, I think that it's going to be a fun album. And I think that people should want to see it. And I can't wait to see the video.
Awesome. Yes. Thank you. Yeah, I think we haven't planned the date, but it'll be probably the following week after the album drops. Hmm.
I always think that, you know, video for me is really important. When I was young, I didn't have music videos of people from my community to look up to and to, you know, get excited about. So when they come out now, I'm always very excited, and I always love it when an artist gets to put down on video, you know, their take on their own music and put their personality out there. I think it's incredibly important, I think, as a visual medium. So
Absolutely. So do I.
I want to thank you so much for talking with me. I'm really excited for the album to come out. I'm really excited to introduce you to so many new audiences and especially youth. I love introducing youth to new music, and especially where I know some drag kids at different community organizations. They
Hmm.
get so excited to see artists out there doing what it is that they love to do.
Amazing.
So,
Amazing. Well, thank you for having me, and yeah, thanks for spreading the word. I appreciate it.
listen, I'm in your corner, and I'm out there waving the flag, all of them, all of the flags.
Right. Great.
For anyone who is watching this again, this is Regina Gently, and the new album is coming out September 18th. If you're watching this after, go get it. If you're watching this before, stay tuned, it's coming.
Mhm.
And Any Other Boyfriend is the song that's out there, and you can also go vote for it on the Q32 at QReview.ca. You might want to throw some votes out there. Thank you
Mhm.
for being with me, and thank you so much. And I'm excited to see everything else that comes.
Awesome. Thank you.